My guest today is author, activist, and founder of the Soul of Money Institute and co-founder of the Pachamama Alliance, Lynne Twist. Welcome, Lynne.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
It's so great to have you on the podcast. I really appreciate you being here today, and I appreciate all the work that you do to make the world a better, more sustainable, and equitable place. Mm-hmm. And you've done a lot in your life, and you have also written a new book called Living a Committed Life, Finding Freedom and Fulfillment in a Purpose Larger Than Yourself. And that sounds like it's describing your life. And also, it sounds like a call to action. And I'd love to know what inspired you to write the book.
Well, thank you for that wonderful statement. It is about my life, but it's also about your life. It's about the lives that are being lived now, that are lives in service, where we've surrendered to the times we're living in, knowing that it's calling for us to be more than just our lives starring us. I think if we're alive today, and anybody listening to this it's not an accident that we're here at a time when it's all hands on deck. It's the crises we face are multiple. They're in every sector, in every part of society, in every country, in every economic class, in every even the uber wealthy are facing incredible things that I'm very familiar with. So it's like none of us, and of course climate crisis and pandemic, that there's no one who can get away from any of that. So we're living in a time where it's really calling on us to live lives greater than our own agenda. Mm-hmm. And, the collective agenda is survival. The collective agenda is a healthy and productive life for everybody. The collective agenda, and we all want it, is a safe, sustainable, just, flourishing world. And so this book is really about being one of the people that's alive today who is on board, on the job, up to it. And I think that's everybody. So I was inspired to write the book really because of all the amazing people that are in the book. Stories about, teachers to bus drivers to, Mother Teresa, people that are extraordinary by any measure, but who started out ordinary until they made a commitment larger than their own life. And I think we can all do that. And I think the world is calling for us to do that. So the book is designed to assist us, to inspire us, to ignite us, to support us, and to empower us to be everything we can be, because I think the world needs us. So that's kind of why I wrote it.
Well, it is an inspiring book, and it's chock full of stories and examples and your own experience, with making a commitment and how you make a commitment, and I think a lot of people are ready to make that commitment, and they just don't know how, or they aren't sure where to start. They want to help, but they're not sure how to do that. And can you talk a little bit about how to get started?
Well, I don't, yes, I can. I can say some things about it. I can tell some stories. I don't have a formula. I don't think there is one. So that's why I don't think I have one, but maybe there is and someone else has it. I know there's a lot of books about purpose, and some of them are very, very helpful. Probably all of them are. What I think this time requires is listening for your calling. And listening for your calling, what are you being called to do? The signals or the signs, or the, might say, clues, mm-hmm. are what moves you to your core, or mm-hmm. what is so not okay with you that you have to do something about it, or what hurts your heart in a way that you're worried about it, or constantly in anxiety about it. Mm-hmm. Because when you start going to work on the things that hurt your heart, on the things that you worry most about, on the things that infuriate you about the world, or about your community, or about the way things are headed, when you get into action about it, you don't have time to worry anymore. You don't have time to be upset about it. You don't have time to blame anybody, or complain about it. I talk about transforming complaint into commitment. You become someone who can take action. And one of the misunderstandings I think in life is that we think we need to be super extraordinary to take on a big mission.
Mhm.
And I think it's the other way around. I think when you get called and feel in your heart and soul, almost in your body, that you can be useful to a big mission and you commit to it, that commitment reaches back into your life and shapes you into the kind of person that can fulfill it. You know,
Mhm.
Mother Teresa was an ordinary high school teacher in Calcutta, and then she became a principal, but she wasn't even a very good principal until she got her, you know, she was kind of ordinary, till she got her calling or realized she was being called by God on a train to Darjeeling, a curriculum conference, to start her own order, which became the Missionaries of Charity. And she would say, if she were with us today, that ordinary people have every opportunity, every minute of every day to become extraordinary out of what they commit to. And I say the same thing. Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, you know, Oprah, Jane Goodall, people we all kind of admire, kind of everybody admires, are people who began as ordinary as anyone, and something they listened to the universe. They were open enough. They were conscious enough. They calmed down the noise in their head, which meditation helps a lot, by the way. So that their worries about themselves and their self-absorptions move into the background, and you can hear what's in the foreground calling you for your own contribution. And then you become, I think, an instrument of something that wants to happen, and you can feel it. It kind of almost comes through your body. So that's not a formula, but it's more like a story. I think if you read the biographies of any of the great people that we all know and love, often their greatness came out of a huge breakdown, you know, a crash of the stock market that took all their resources away, or divorce that devastated them, or the death of a child, or just abject poverty. Many of the greatest people on earth started their greatness out of a breakdown. And one of the things I talk about in the book, it's one of the distinctions in one of the chapters, is every breakdown, in my view, has in it the seeds of a breakthrough that's greater than the breakdown.
Mhm.
But you need to be willing to look for them, to trust that they're there, to water them, to literally fertilize them like a garden, so that that breakthrough can become visible to you and you can step into it. And of course, in any breakdown, you got to wallow in it a little bit. You got to be upset about it a little bit. You got to do your grieving. You got to do your, oh, poor me thing. But that doesn't last forever. And when it begins to wane, there's a wonderful phrase from Michael Beckwith and Reverend Deborah Johnson: pain pushes until vision pulls. And
Mhm.
pain does push, and it hurts. But at some point, the pain kind of turns into something that you can put behind you, because the vision is pulling you stronger than the pain is pushing you. So that's not a formula exactly, but there's some clues there. And I often tell people to remember what touched them when they were a child, what what heroes and heroines did they have when they want to grow up? I want to be like X, Y, or Z. Or what behavior did they find themselves doing naturally, even on the playground? If there's someone who couldn't stand it when somebody was bullying and they did something about it, they either got in the middle of it or went and told an adult. That might be somebody whose calling is to get involved in justice.
Mhm.
If someone, when going back to the playground, when it was time to choose teams for sports, they always chose the one who would never be chosen first, but always last. Maybe you're someone who always watches to make sure there's inclusion. You start to realize that there's things that you care about and you're sort of made to make right. And those are some clues.
Oh, very helpful. I think all of that is very helpful. And one of a quote I have here, one of the things you say in the book is, when you commit to making a difference with your life, you enter the realm of the sacred. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, I think it's a really beautiful way to understand God's work, you could say, or the work of the universe, or the work of creation, however it fits for you in the way you're oriented around faith or the mystery of life. I think once we make a commitment, there's a wonderful quote by W.H. Murray. He says, "Providence moves too. All kind of unforeseen things start to break your way." And I think that's because we're meant to be great. We're meant to make a difference. I feel like if we somehow know or begin to realize that our life has been given to us, it's a gift, it's a blessing to be alive. And when we're blessed with life, any kind of life, even if you're disabled or you're, you have, maybe you're blind, or maybe you have, what you call some sort of block or wart, you are designed to make a difference. And I think that's just the truth. I can't prove it, but I can certainly live into it. And if you think that way, if you orient that way, then it becomes a divine path to express your highest gifts. And you become an instrument actually of the sacred, because I think life is sacred. And when you treat your life as a sacred gift, then you want to make sure that this life that you've been given, that you contribute in a sacred way to make a difference. You have a kind of reverence for your life. So you stop abusing yourself, you stop diminishing yourself, you actually have the power to stop even doubting yourself, which is so much of what we're doing all the time. And as a human being, yes, all those considerations will still come up. But as I said earlier, they start to move to the background, and your capacity to be useful moves to the foreground, and the noise calms down. It doesn't go away. You still wake up in the morning maybe and think you're not thin enough or not tall enough or not smart enough, or all those thoughts, they don't disappear completely. I think Gandhi had them. I know Mother Teresa had them. They're in her journal. But they were in the background, and what was prominent or prescient or present or in the foreground was, I'm here to make a difference and I'm going to do it. And, rather than doubting myself and blocking my capacity to make a difference, I'm just going to go for it. And in the going for it, all that starts to disappear, and you start finding capacities, qualities, character traits you didn't even know you had. And they start to flourish in your life. I have a phrase from my first book called The Soul of Money. There's a whole chapter on this. What you appreciate appreciates.
Love that.
And what you appreciate about yourself actually appreciates. I have learned to appreciate that I have a communication gift. I don't know where it came from. I can't claim really that it's mine. I think it's something that I've been given so that I can do what I'm doing with you. And to not use that and to wonder whether or not it's good enough would be to block it and not make it available. But to realize that, this isn't really mine. It's something that I've been given to be the trustees of, or the trustee of, for this lifetime. So I better use it and use it well, because it's a gift I've been given and I want to give it. So you start orienting things that way, and you start seeing your life as a treasure, not something you need to protect, but something you need to make use of and contribute.
Beautiful, beautiful. There's a section in the book you're talking about awakening the dreamer. And you say we're sleepwalking through a consumerist culture. And I'm thinking that has something to do with some of the ways that we block ourselves from and doubt ourselves, and the things that keep us from being fully in the world and making a difference. Can you say a little bit more about this sleepwalking through a consumerist culture?
Well, the phrase awakening the dreamer comes from the Pachamama Alliance, an organization I co-founded, and it comes actually ultimately from the indigenous people of the Amazon, who in our first encounter with the Achuar people and the Shuar people told us the most important way we could preserve the Amazon rainforest was by changing the dream of the modern world.
Mm.
changing the dream of the modern world. And when we first got that assignment, it was, you know, first of all, it was a little bit like, what are they talking about? And then it was kind of pretty clear. And then it was super daunting. Change the dream of the modern world, the dream of consumption, acquisition, accumulation, taking, you know, amassing some fortune financially and every other way.
Mhm.
And we started to really address and see that that dream is really become a nightmare. It's the
Mhm.
source of our climate crisis, it's the source of our political divide, it's the source of inequality, it's the source of war. It's actually the source of everything that we're trying to change. This mania, this false dream, this trance that we have to accumulate for ourselves, and that we're separate selves rather than we're all in this together as a collective, interconnected oneness with each other, with all species, with the community of life, and with future generations. So to awaken from that trance of separateness, it's me first and me alone, and
Mhm.
I can maybe take care of the people that I love, but everybody else, you know, you take care of yourselves because I don't have time for you. That way of being is a cultural misunderstanding. I
Mhm.
don't think it's a flaw of our species. I think um, it's not a flaw. It's what is the word I'm looking for? We misunderstand who we are. We
Mhm.
misunderstand the opportunity and privilege that it is to be alive. So awakening the dreamer is to awaken from the trance and create a new dream, a dream that's consistent with the future of life. We call this dream the Pachamama Alliance, an environmentally sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, socially just human presence on this planet, a new dream for humanity.
Mm.
And the idea is, and the indigenous people really told us this, they said you can't really ultimately change your everyday action because it will fundamentally line up with what you're dreaming for.
Mhm.
That's kind of what's guiding you.
Mm.
But how to change your everyday action and how to change the world is to change your dream. Change
Mm.
it from consumption, acquisition, more for me, more for mine, to a collective dream, a dream where what we're really dreaming for is giving everyone a chance for a healthy and productive life and being in a collective health and well-being, a nourishing world for everyone. And
Mm.
that dream, when you have that dream, when you actually set your sights on that kind of a dream, it reaches back and forms your everyday action. Then you realize, you know, one of the things that I know to be true, that the choices that you and I make today and every day determine the future of life for 1,000 years. Now, is that a burden? No, that ennobles your life.
Mhm.
That ennobles us. That gives us a chance to live the most meaningful lives any generation of humankind has ever lived. If we're aware of that, if we choose the dream that the way we choose our decisions will impact in a good way, in a nourishing way, in a healthy way, in a contributing way, the next 1,000 years. I mean, that changes the way you think, that changes the way you behave, that changes the way you walk in the world. So we need to be woken up from the trance,
Yeah.
pierce through that apathy, that kind of arrogance, really, and
Mhm.
self-absorption,
Mhm.
because in the heart of hearts of every human being, no matter how greedy they're behaving,
Mhm.
what they want is what this program's about. What they want is to live in a sacred relationship with the long-term future of life. That's what people really want. I believe that. I
Mhm.
can't prove it, but I live with that commitment, that vision, and that trust.
Mm. Mm. Yes. Well, I want to talk about some things related to this awakening the dreamer, which is the toxic myths, the three toxic myths of scarcity. But first, I want to give you another quote. Just a beautiful. There's so many beautiful gems in the book, but you say, and I think this is related too. We don't live in the reality of the world. We live in the conversations we have about the reality of the world. A new conversation shifts the way we show up. And I think it shifts the dream as well. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah. I think it's so amazing to realize this. For me, that was a complete revelation that I don't live in my life the way I think I do, or I don't live in my marriage as the way I think I do, or my community, or my world the way I think I do. I live in the conversation I have about my marriage. I live in the conversation I have about myself. I live in the conversation I have about my family. I live in the conversation I have about my community. I live in the conversation I have about the world. And when you realize that, you realize that I may not be able to change everything immediately about my community, my marriage, my family, my world, but I have absolute omnipotence over the conversation I have about my life. Absolute omnipotence over the conversation I have about my family, my world, my community. And that's where the levers and dials of life are. Many people say this, but this is just another way of looking at it. If you're living in the conversation of being a victim, well, then you become really consistent with that conversation. Your behavior is defensive, you're upset about this, you can't really control this or that. But if you live in the conversation about that you are empowered and you have choices and that your choices make a difference and that you have the opportunity to live a committed life, which is what my book's about, then it totally transforms the action. So I'll give you an example. I love, and I cite this in the book, I love Paul Hawken, the great author and ecologist, and he says to consider the possibility that the climate crisis is not happening to us, and we're the victims of it, and we have to mitigate it and stop it and hold it back before it destroys us, like we're the victims of it. He says, imagine the possibility that the climate crisis is happening for us, that it is feedback from the mother, who's very loudly and in some ways tenderly compared to what she could be doing, helping to guide us and disrupt us so that we resource who we are, reconsider the trajectory of our economic systems, our education systems, the way we live, the way we think, so that we reset, resource our lives. That is a mere change of one word. The climate crisis is happening to us, or it's happening for us. Same thing with the pandemic. Was it happening to us? Yes, it was painful. People died, suffering was awful. People lost their homes, their businesses. But in other ways, when you think, is it happening for us? The indigenous people say, and this is a beautiful statement, they say that we've been in a primordial part of who we are as a species. We've been waiting and longing for something powerful and sacred enough to interrupt and disrupt our way of living, which we tried to disrupt on our own, but we couldn't do it because we become so powerful, so that we would be able to stop, rethink, calm down, go inside, not just of our houses, but inside of our heart, and rethink how we want to live and how we want to carry forward. Now those are words, but those words shift the conversation that I've been living in now. Those words shift the way I perceive myself and my capacity to live life. So those are a couple demonstrations. And transformation in many ways is a profound shift in the conversation, in a new context that changes the way you think, behave, and see yourself in the world. So that's a little bit of a long answer to your question, but that's what I mean by that.
Oh, no, very inspiring. And I think when you say, these are just words, well, they're words, but they're imbued with emotion and passion. And so it's a big difference when we're just saying words as opposed to really feeling them and bringing them forth and helping to, because they help to inspire and ignite in people hearing those words. So I appreciate that greatly. And I want to say too that, in talking about this, the wake up call of our, climate change and the problems we're having in the environment and how we're treating, our resources. You talk about that this is a call to transform as a species. And that sounds so true to me. That it's a species wide transformation.
Mhm. I agree. I think one of the things that was kind of stunning to me about the pandemic, and still is, it's a virus.
Mhm.
Yes, there's millions of viruses. The viruses, like everything, comes from the earth.
Mhm.
This virus makes only one species sick. There's viruses all over the place that take trees down, and there's all kinds of ailments. But this virus, the COVID virus, makes only one species sick, and it makes any one of the humans, any one of the people, that members of that species sick. So we're all, even though it didn't turn out to be a great equalizer in the way that it impacted people's lives, I know it hurt the most vulnerable people way more than everyone else. However, in other ways, it was an equalizer. You could not hide from it behind high gates.
Mhm.
No matter how many masks you put on, people still got it.
Right.
And whether you had billions of dollars in the bank or you were in debt, you were still, and anybody in between, you were still vulnerable to that virus. So I'm just pointing out that there's something going on with our species that is really, really important. And it looks like, there's all this gender fluidity. There's all kinds of changes in health records, like, statistics, like the rise of autism, huge rise in autism. Suicide rates are at an all-time high. Mental illness rates are at an all-time high. Something's going on with our species that is highly, highly intense. And I'm going to say this beautiful phrase that comes from one of my greatest teachers, Werner Erhard. I remember in the old S training, which was the first program that was the godmother of what's now called Landmark. I remember Werner Erhard saying this thing. He said, when the first fish crawled up on land, elephants and eagles were possible.
Mhm.
When the first fish crawled up on land, elephants and eagles became possible.
Mhm.
And something about that's so moving to me, because I feel like we're in a evolutionary leap as a species, and it will require pain, almost like when if you've had a child, and I've had 3, when you're having a baby, the more it hurts, the closer you are to having a child.
Mhm.
It gets more and more painful towards the end. Pregnancy is wonderful because we know we're having a baby, but if we suddenly had this thing growing inside of us and we didn't know we were pregnant, we would think we were sick. And I feel like our species is pregnant with a new kind of human being, but we need to go through this morning sickness, which I think was one way of talking about the pandemic.
Mhm.
And a long, very difficult pregnancy,
Mhm.
and then a long, very difficult labor to
Mhm.
give birth to a new kind of human being, a kind of human being that's not self-absorbed, a kind of human being that understands we're all interconnected, not just with each other as humans, but also with the trees, with the snakes, with the monkeys, with the plants, with all future generations of all life. All children of all species of all time are connected to you and me, and the way we live impacts them. And so that's very, very, very profound. That would be a profound transformation, to actually live in a way that we're aware of that, conscious of that, and living consistent with that, what I call truth. So I think we're in a very powerful species reset,
Mhm.
rebirth,
Yeah.
and that some of us won't make it. And as in many species transformations, some species don't make it, and it's not their fault. I'm not making anybody wrong. It's just part of the grand design, perhaps, is taking us through some sort of a wormhole. And there's a lot of prophecies about this time, and I think we're in a huge transition, and I'm privileged to be alive to witness it, to see it, to participate, hopefully survive it, but be useful to it.
Mm. Yes, yes, yes. And along the lines of this topic of transformation, you say something I think was really helpful and profound, which is that transformation doesn't accuse the past or current situation of being wrong. And simple, but not. Simple, but not.
Well, I make a distinction between change, which is
Mhm,
wonderful and important, and transformation.
mhm,
So change usually requires you to insult something.
mhm.
You know, we see this in politics. Every politician running for anything is wants to make a change,
Yeah.
and they want to make a change, and they establish that by making whatever's happening now wrong. We don't want this anymore. We're going to make a change,
Yeah.
you know, and then we change over here, and then we accuse that of being wrong, and then we change over here. So change is very volatile. Change requires making something wrong and something right, or something not so good and something better than that. Change has that dynamic in it. You know, when you're trying to, you know, diet, you make the size of your body the way it is now wrong, and you make the thinner body right. You know, change has that dynamic in it. It's positional. Transformation doesn't do that. It's amazing. Transformation doesn't insult the past. It has it suddenly make sense.
Mhm.
That happened in order to make this possible. And so you stand on the shoulders, on the contribution of what came before. It doesn't insult the past, it doesn't insult the present, and it creates a new future. And
Mhm.
so transformation has that quality to it that is respectful.
Mhm.
The word respect means respectate or relook or re-see. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes when a woman has had a nasty, harsh, difficult divorce, you know, that's a big change in her life. And sometimes she has to really make that guy wrong, or the
Mhm.
man needs to make that gal wrong, or if it's the same sex couple, the other person wrong in order to get out of that relationship. And even our teenagers, you know, make their parents wrong in order to get out of the house. It kind of helps you to get out of the house to make your parents wrong. But eventually, you know, just as the poets say, a child who becomes 21, 20, they look back and see how wise their parents were. Sometimes women or men who've gotten out of a toxic relationship look back and say, my God, I'm so grateful that it didn't work out, because I didn't have my independence. Now I have it. And thank God the two of us gave birth to those amazing kids. Thank
Mhm.
God, you know, sometimes, not always, a transformation occurs, and the guy or gal you were with becomes your very, very best friend. And
Mhm.
that's a transformation. So I'm trying to give some examples, because
Yeah.
transformation really is kind,
Mhm.
and it completes things in a way that the experience is one of love.
Mhm. Yes, and to your previous point, where we are transforming as a species, it sounds like, which is not easy, as you stated, and which may be very long, it may be generations long, but aligning with that idea of transformation being compassionate, being kind, and non-accusatory, but embracing. That is almost an instruction. It is almost, it's almost a path of aligning with that to help us each individually and collectively
Mhm.
navigate transformation, it seems.
Yeah, I have a wonderful prophecy that I love to pass on about what often we call the patriarchy and the rise of the feminine.
Mhm.
Because in some cases, the rise of the feminine is a little bit about making the patriarchy wrong, and you know, I'm one of the people sometimes doing that. So I want to just say this a whole nother way. There's a beautiful Baha'i prophecy about the first 100 years of the third millennium, which is now. We're in the first century of the third millennium, and there's a prophecy about this century called the Sofia Century, the century when divine feminine wisdom will prevail and rise up and meet the moment. And the prophecy says that for hundreds of years, the bird of humanity has had two wings, a male wing
Mhm.
female wing. And
Mhm.
the male wing has been fully extended and fully expressed for hundreds of years, while the female wing of the bird of humanity has been folded in and not yet fully opened up and not yet fully expressed. So the male wing, in order to keep the bird of humanity afloat, has
Mhm.
become overdeveloped, overmuscular, and has almost become violent by necessity to keep the bird of humanity afloat. So we've been flying in circles for hundreds of years.
Mhm.
And in the first century of the third millennium, the female wing in all of us, in women and in men, will fully express ourselves. The male wing in all of us will relax a little bit, and the bird of humanity, instead of flying in circles, will for the first time in hundreds of years soar. And I
Mhm.
love that prophecy because it doesn't make anybody wrong.
Right.
It makes it all the next evolutionary space
Yeah.
for the gender expression of the male and the female in all of us. So that's an example of a prophecy that creates a conversation, what I'll call a narrative,
Mhm.
that's empowering
Mm.
and that instructs us to express our feminine side more, all of us.
Mhm.
Calm down that masculine, kind of over competitive, over violent way of looking at things that we all sometimes embody,
Mhm.
and allow our finest selves, the healthy masculine, the healthy embodied feminine, to allow the bird of humanity to soar. So I love that prophecy.
Oh, I do too. I loved it in your book, and I was going to ask you about it. And I love the idea of, not making anyone wrong. We can kind of look at, well, patriarchy's been an experiment. That's, maybe not, had we've learned something from it as a species, and now we're ready to move on into the next evolution of ourselves. Um,
Yes.
and you mentioned the Sofia Century, and I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that.
Well, it really comes from that prophecy and also other prophecies, the I Ching, the Eagle and the Condor prophecy from South America, that the heart of humanity has been somewhat suppressed,
Mhm.
and the mind has sort of taken over, sort of the masculine feminine. It's another way of looking at that. And there's several people who call this the Sophia Century, and I'm one of them because I really feel that the divine feminine wisdom that's coming through is what will is meeting
Mhm.
the intensity of the times we're living in.
Mhm.
And the word Sophia is a ancient term for wisdom, from the way back in the Greek times, and really the embodiment of it is divine feminine wisdom, divine wisdom coming through, and it's available to all of us, to men and women. But women are rising in their leadership, in our capacity to express ourselves, in finding our way out of patriarchal constructs that have kind of gone into overdrive,
Mhm.
and we're being taken seriously, thank God.
Yeah.
And we are taking ourselves seriously, and we're letting go of our doubts and our restrictions on ourselves and our thinking we need to be in the background to be feminine. No, being feminine doesn't mean background. Being feminine means leading with compassion, forgiveness, commitment, heart, courage. The qualities that are feminine are often some of the strongest and most important qualities of the heart. So I feel that the Sophia century, like I said, the first century of the third millennium, is the century we're in, and we're only 22 years in, 23 years in, only not even a quarter century in. And I think this first 100-year cycle, I like to think in long swaths of time,
Mhm. Yeah.
will determine the next millennium, the next 1,000 years. If you think about the 20th century, it was dominated by war and the fear of war, two huge world wars, and the constant, and the Cold War, the constant fear of war. The 21st century is different. And now I'm not saying it's devoid of war. We're right in the middle of the Ukraine war. But if you look with the long view,
Mhm.
the kind of number of wars on the planet is less than it's ever been in history.
Mhm.
Now, that doesn't excuse the horror of what's happening in Ukraine or Syria or Yemen or other places. Um, But if you look at the long view, there is something happening that is we're finding our way out of the horror of constant violence. If you look back in history, I mean, the violence is just massive. We're finding our way out of colonialism. We're really looking at how that's taken so much real estate in our brain. We're not finding our way out of it exactly. We're addressing it, let's say, addressing racism. We're addressing gender misunderstanding. We're addressing things that I'm saying come from really looking anew from the heart or from the feminine way of seeing. And men do that too. So, and then you can see the patriarchy in its most unhealthy and ugly way, kind of screaming for attention with these, the rise of some of these dictators that I could name, but I won't, who are hell bent on staying in power through violence and false claims and power mongers. And the ugliness of that is very visible now. It's not taken for granted. It's showing its dark side. And I think it's important to, in many ways, somehow that's what happens when things are threatened and their survival is near its end. I often say we're hospicing. The real job of our time is to hospice the death of the old structures and systems that no longer serve us. And hospicing is an act of witness, an act of respect, and an act of love, while we midwife the birth of the new structures and systems that now we understand will serve us. And hospicing and midwifing is gentle. It's very feminine. It doesn't have to be done by women, but it's feminine. It doesn't accuse. It doesn't kill. We're hospicing the death of the old structures. We're not attacking them. Or I'm suggesting that we don't attack them, because that's what we want to let go of attack, so we want to attack the things that are attacking, and then bring into existence with great reverence these new ways of seeing and being that are respectful and reverent for all forms of life and for the human journey. So I think we're in the most amazing time in history, and I love calling it the Sofia Century because it frees us into realizing that's 100 years. It's beyond your own lifetime. So then you don't get so stuck in your own lifetime. You can't take credit the way we can if we can check something off. I got it done. We all need to contribute to this unfolding. It's an evolutionary moment. It's an evolutionary time. It's an evolutionary century. And I'm really, I like that narrative, let's say. It makes me feel relevant and powerful and gives me a way to make a contribution, I'll say, and hopefully everybody.
And you have made many, many, many contributions, and you are inspiring to many people. And I'm wondering what inspires you.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm pretty inspired by by everything. I mean, I have a commitment to stay inspired. I think maybe what inspires me is my granddaughter lives with us right now. She's in law school and she's mixed race African American. She self-identifies as African American. Her mom is, my daughter-in-law is African American. My son is white. And we were talking at dinner last night. We sometimes do at dinner this wonderful little exercise. What happened today that was a thorn? What happened today that was a rose? What happened today that was a bud? The thorn is something that wasn't so good. A rose is something that was really awesome. And a bud is something that will flower in the future. And when she was talking about law school, she's in the 7th week of law school. And she's just totally wants to make a difference with her life. And she inspires me so much. She's trying to decide whether she's going to be a human rights attorney or a climate justice attorney or an environmental attorney, but whatever it is, it's going to be that kind of attorney. She's not going to be a corporate litigator. And what she sees and the way she looks at the world is really, really powerful for me.
Mm.
I hear some dogs barking outside. Yeah. But this is, you know, if I were 23, which is her age, I might be scared to death of the future. You know, does she want to have kids? I mean, my God, the world's such a mess. But
Mhm.
no, she's inspired by the challenges in front of us. She knows that her generation has a lot that they're going to need to accomplish to turn things around. But she's turned on and excited about it and engaged and interested and really see she can make a difference. So young people inspire me, my granddaughter in particular. But also what inspires me is the natural world,
Mhm.
because I get the real privilege of working with Indigenous people, and to them, it's all part of the natural world unfolding, and that we're not
Mhm.
fighting to save the planet. The
Mhm.
planet doesn't need us to save it. The planet will get rid of us if we're a problem. What what Indigenous people, they're not even fighting for the forest. They are of the forest, and
Mhm.
it's the forest speaking for itself through them. And I'm beginning to see that that's the gift that we all have. We're the earth, we're life, we're the spirit of life speaking for itself,
Mhm.
calling for its finest hour. And when I think of us all that way, I'm inspired by that, and I'm privileged to be alive. And then finally, I'll just say a quote that I love from Buckminster Fuller. I'm pretty sure I put it in the book, but if I didn't, I should have.
Mhm.
Bucky Fuller was one of my great teachers, Buckminster Fuller, and he said, "Never forget your children are
Mhm.
your elders in universe time.
Mhm.
They come into a more complete, more evolved universe than you can ever understand except through their eyes."
Mhm.
And I love that idea. Our children are elders in universe time. I love that. And when I see my granddaughters, I have some other granddaughters, one that's 10 and one that's 12. They're digital natives. I can't even turn on my TV without them. But it's not just that. The way they're navigating life is really, I really see they're evolved,
Mhm.
and especially young girls, young women. They're not afraid to speak their mind. They're not afraid to take their positions of authority when it's right for them. They're participating full out in sports. They don't seem to be limited culturally the way I was, the way my mother was, the way my daughter was less. But each generation is more inspiring than the one before. And so I'm very inspired by young people, and particularly my own grandkids.
And that quote is in the book. That is in the book.
Oh, good. I can't remember if I put it in there, but
Yeah.
I'm glad I
And
did.
what's next for you? What's coming up? You're promoting the book, and what's next?
Well, uh, yeah, that's a good question. What's next for me is the next decade of my life. I feel I'm really dedicated to preserving the sacred headwaters of the Amazon rainforest and having it become the first permanent protected ecosystem on Earth. And permanent protection does not exist on Earth right now for any ecosystem. But I am a stand, the Pachamama Alliance is a stand and a commitment that it will. And the sacred headwaters of the Amazon is the probably, and many people would say, most ecologists would say, the most critical ecosystem on Earth to preserve. They're all critical. It's the source of the entire Amazon system, which is the source of our climate, and it's pristine and it's roadless, and it's overseen by 30 indigenous nations who are fiercely committed to keeping it protected forever and ever and being its natural custodians. And that's a big project because there's no such thing as permanent protected status on
Mhm.
Earth.
Mhm.
But we need it. And I'm working on, many of us are working, but I'm one of the people working on bringing into existence a world community that has a kind of, as you call it, sacred stream
Mhm.
on this planet, that are sacred streams and rivers and forests that are untouchable, oceans that are untouchable, that we realize these are the source of life. This is where the true value is, not in extractive industries and taking oil and mining and things out of the ground and gold, but rather preserving the
Mhm.
natural world, and making it sacred. So that's really, and the sanctity of life and the empowerment of women and girls. So those are kind of my big things.
Oh, wow. It's such important work. It's such important work. And I thank you so much for being on the program today and for writing this book. It's coming out shortly
Yeah.
and probably be out when we by the time we release this podcast. But this book really, I just want to say again, your life is very inspiring and fascinating, really. And you talk a lot about that. And at the same time, you're also sharing the stories of so many people. Some people will know your work with Mother Teresa, and also some inspiring people that people won't recognize. So I think that this book will really, it's going to be a great stocking stuffer, I'll tell you that. And I think it's just a really helpful and very timely. So I hope everybody runs out and gets a copy.
Yeah, and I'll give you a little tip because I think this is pretty cool. I learned this the other day. That one of our partners, of course, it'll be on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the places. But one of the companies that we're partnering with is called Porchlight Books,
Mhm.
and they have this cool thing. You can buy, and I'm going to do this myself, but I'm inviting other people to do it too. You can buy all your Christmas presents through Porchlight. You can write a little generic note like, not Christmas, holiday, whatever it is. Holiday presents. This is my Hanukkah gift to you. This is a book that I think is very meaningful. I've read it and I'd like you to have it for my holiday gift.
Mhm.
Put that kind of a note. You can send that to Porchlight, and then you can buy, if you have 30 presents to buy, 30 books from Porchlight, and you get a discount. And
Mhm.
then they will, then you send an email to the people that you want to give this gift to, and you say, I bought this gift for you. Here, click here and put your address in for Porchlight, and you will receive the book by the holidays as my gift to you with a card from me. So if you don't have people's address,
Yeah,
you can do it that way. It's such a cool thing. So I
that's
have
brilliant.
a
Yeah.
woman who says she does 300 Christmas gifts. So she's going to do that. 300. I thought, oh, 300 books. Yes. Or you just can buy anywhere. But I'll just say Porchlight it has a discount. And then I've signed 1,000 books for Porchlight.
Oh,
And
great.
also you get a download of the first chapter. So that's kind of a special deal that I thought I'd promote because I just found out what they're doing. And I'm so excited about that.
That is exciting. And did you do an audio version of the book as well?
I did an audio version also. The audio version, it comes out. They always do it after the hardcore. Not, I don't have a hardcover.
Hardcover.
That comes out, but you can order it. I think. I'm not sure. I hope so. But anyway, all this is pre-orderable. People can order it today, and
Mhm.
it will be shipped on November 29th now because we moved the print date a month because of some things. But you can pre-order it now. You can pre-order it today or tomorrow or right away.
That's fantastic. Lynne, it's been my pleasure. What a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I love the name of your podcast, and I love talking to you, and I really appreciate your work. And thank you so much for doing it and for proliferating the kind of messages that I know you do every single time. And I was lucky enough to be one of those messengers. And thank you also for promoting the book. I'm very proud of it.
I'm happy to do it. Thank you.
Okay, take care.